Hello, everyone. We're going to be starting today with a Poppin' Off presented by Jack in the Box. And then we're going to start our preview of the playoffs.
Yeah, we're going to be taking a look at if there's any hope for the bottom teams left in the league.
I'm Avast. This is Jayne, and welcome to Contested. What's up, guys? We're once again live from the Frontier, the hallowed Frontier Communication Center here in Dallas, Texas. We're riding out the storms. We're not getting too many storms.
No, the storm's just moving up just in our general direction.
Yes.
Sees that Avast and myself are in Dallas and just leaves out east. So we're going to be safe, but if you're out in Houston or anywhere near the path of the storm, hope you're staying safe as the storm passes through.
Yes, though luckily seems to be missing portions of that area. But yeah, hopefully everyone's staying safe in this time. And thank you for tuning in because we have ourselves the postseason preview starting today. But before we get into the preview, Jayne, we have to get into, of course, something, another time-honored tradition, another hallowed tradition, I would say, which would be, or not hallowed, more of a hallowed. Hallowed would be hollowed out.
One of those.
It's one of the two.
One of those.
It's one of the two. But it is the Poppin' Off presented by Jack in the Box. And today we have a big one. One that has caused some salt here on the Twitter universe sphere. We're going to be seeing Kevster here, but it's not only about Kevster. It's when Valiant dive out of Anubis last, get caught by the EMP, do not focus down any of the tanks off of KSF's EMP. And because of that great positioning from Shaz, staying in the back line, keeping his team up, and Kevster coming in for the counter EMP, Gladiators can roll into point, hit the rock onto the Incoming Dreamer, and cap, allowing them to win the Anubis and start the reverse sweep. Or not the reverse sweep. Technically, Gladiators had a map before that. But if Valiant had won that map, they probably would have won the series. They would have won the series, in fact, because it would have been 2-1. So they would have been 3-1. Yep. They would have won the series.
And that's how math
works. And then they won that map. They got to go to the next, and then they got to go to Koth.
And then they won.
It was big.
And reverse sweep was complete.
And that was the cardinal sin that they violated. They went outside of the last point of 2 CP, of assault. You don't do that. You just stop. Stop doing that.
It's amazing to me how many times, especially in the Overwatch League, teams are like, I've got this perfect defense. It's worked for like 4 minutes. Let's try something different for the last 30 seconds. Nothing will go wrong.
We see, there's been some instances where teams have done it successfully where they dive out of like last points, like Volskaya last and EMP outside. And it can work, but it's just so risky.
It's very risky.
It's like when you go into like Wall Street bets. It's like
okay, maybe not that risky.
Maybe not that risky, but it's like that's. Do you have like?
That's playing drunken darts blindfolded.
It's like a 60% chance sometimes that things will go wrong. Honestly, when you go outside of last, in my opinion, like I think it's just so. There's just so many bad things that can happen once you commit ults outside of the last, and even if you somehow barely win the fight, you've used all of them before. So it's just. And you're losing time bank because you're taking fights earlier. So I don't really ever agree with it for the most part, but did not pay off for the Valiant there.
No.
And then it led to a Twitter war.
Yes, the Twitter war. And if you wanted more information about that Twitter war between Packing 10 and DPay, well, you should be checking out our Tuesday episode where we went fully in depth on that saga.
Very in depth.
Very in depth.
We looked at it
super in depth
many times.
Not as in depth as investigative reporter Brad Rajani would have gone.
Of course, but we don't have the background.
We don't have the background, and we did not get the interns Jath and Nav on the case.
No,
so
they're unavailable right now. They're on Safari.
Are they?
Yeah. I don't know what they're looking for, but they're out there somewhere. I don't know what they're looking for just yet, but they're out there.
It's much to Avast's happiness, glee, joyous exultations abound. Regular season is over and we're moving into the postseason. So as we go into this postseason powwow series of episodes, so next week we're also going to continue. We've got an episode on Tuesday and Wednesday next week. Just wanted to remind you on that one because, of course, the postseason stuff starts
on Thursday.
So
if we want to get them in, we're going to have to have one on Wednesday.
Yeah, so we're going to do a whole bunch of shows leading up to the postseason. But the theme of today's show is the best of the worst, or the worst of the worst, or
it's just the worst.
It's just the worst.
Just the worst. It's the toilet zone.
Yeah, you have entered the toilet zone.
Yeah, the toilet zone, which is the bottom 2 of APAC and the bottom 5 of NA. So each episode heading in, so including today, the next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll be taking a look at a segment of teams from the regions and sort of talking about what we feel is their strategy, their outlook We're giving an appraisal.
Is there any hope remaining?
Yeah,
for them?
what there should their goals be moving into it? Maybe what strategy? What should we expect potentially? What we're expecting from them? And like you said, if there's any hope for those who are at the bottom, and that definitely there needs to be some hope for those here at the bottom in the toilet zone, because they are not very good at this level. They are not very good on average. But we're going to be starting off with APAC, and with APAC, we have to talk about the bottom two teams currently, because looking at the bottom two for APAC, it's obviously London at 7th, the London Spitfire, and Chengdu Hunters at 6th.
Wait. Chengdu Hunters?
Yes.
No.
At 6th.
That's a typo.
No.
That's a typo.
Nope.
Yeah, Chengdu Hunters are definitely the favorites going into this.
No.
They're going to win it all.
They're not.
And you know why I know this?
Why?
Because the Wheel of Chengdu has told me so. And
Well,
I believe in the Wheel of Chengdu, even though it let me down during the Countdown Cup. I believe.
Speaking of the wheel, and also, by the way, it's the Wheel of Chengdu.
Yes.
Okay.
The Wheel of Chengdu.
It's the Wheel of Chengdu has returned.
So we're going to give the Wheel of Chengdu a chance to redeem itself and give us a better prediction this time.
We've added some new slots.
Last time it was like Chengdu wins everything, and I was like, yes, finally.
No.
And it also told us that
Not
Ameng
quite.
was going to learn a new hero. Also false. So maybe we just see. Maybe the Wheel of Chengdu is just a compulsive liar. Either way, give it a spin.
Well, wheels have been a consistent theme, so let's. Do we both want to do one spin?
Sure, let's do that.
Okay, well, I'll spin first as a non-believer of the Wheel of Chengdu and see maybe with their new additions that we've added to the wheel, what might be selected for the Chengdu run in postseason.
They're going to win it all, chat. Believe.
Pause,
Believe.
Pause, champ.
All right, Wheel.
What does it say? Chengdu gets hunted. Well, that's not good. Because that refers to Chengdu being the hunted as opposed to the hunters and getting absolutely crushed.
Yeah,
because they do not adapt and they still have not been.
They just straight up don't adapt.
I mean, this is probably one of the best metas for them, though, I will say. Because they can play Balzaria and things like that. So I will say it's one of the better metas for them, potentially, because they don't have to play traditional heroes. They can just play silly heroes. So,
well, let's see what
the wheel says they'll get crushed.
Well, let's see what the wheel says to me. It whispers sweet, sweet nothing.
Let's see what it says to a believer. Someone that has made the pilgrimage.
And it says, Chengdu gets hunted.
Is it laying on the same thing, really?
Yep.
Ooh.
Well, the wheel has spoken.
The wheel has spoken. Not a good
Damn
look.
you, wheel.
Not a good look
I
for the
wanted
wheel.
to believe.
That's 2 in a row.
That's
2 in a row. You know what? We'll
my disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined.
We'll just put them down here. We'll put them down there.
Go Chengdu.
Well, not looking good for Chengdu according to the Wheel of Chengdu. But I guess we'll start with them since we've done the wheel now.
Okay.
Just do a little bit more actually non-meme stuff is that I actually do think this is probably the best possible meta for Chengdu.
Yeah.
They can play Balzaria endlessly.
They're nerfing Double Shield into the absolute ground. It's going to be utter chaos. Nobody's going to really have some very established, defined, or well-practiced, well-oiled meta. So, And their DPS are all flexible enough to play anything, even with Ashe getting nerfed and things like that. So I have to say that Chengdu is actually looking much more poised than they were any other time during the season to actually make a playoff run. Yeah, to instead of being hunted. We forgot that it's really the wheel is opposite day, right? So
is it? Is the wheel opposite day?
It means that they're going hunting and they're going to hunt for a Spitfire first. You're going to hunt for metal birds.
Oh.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. But no, it's if they are going to play to their style, this meta is definitely favoring them, especially with Chengdu who's always just loved chaos, and they've got some great players who individually. I don't think that the problem with Chengdu has ever been the individual mechanical ability of these players. See, like Jimmy,
they got a lot of mechanics. They just don't have
a lot of mechanics.
They don't have a car. It's like you have a lot of mechanics on this team, but they need to have something to actually work together and make it work. Like what's the point of owning the auto body repair shop if you're not getting any customers? And that's my mechanics reference. And really good from me, I'd say.
Yeah,
that whole...
and the other thing is that, of course, you have to remember that of all the catch-up games that we've been seeing in that postseason, Chengdu Hunters played in none of them, right? So they've had all this time off, and the reason we have the Wheel of Chengdu is because they did have the new coach come in, Chen. So
yes.
they're just Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Now, the wheel did not give us any, said they were going to do much better.
You know what?
Forget
the wheel. Nobody cares about the wheel.
Okay, so now you're going to
Nobody cares about the wheel.
You're going to be the Pope of the West for the wheel. So there's going to be the two popes here, and I'll be the Pope of the East. And we'll have the various. What are we thinking about the wheels today? And we'll have our interpretations. So
they're basically just circular tarot cards.
Circular tarot cards.
That's makes total sense. Don't question
That does.
Chad.
That makes a lot of sense. So I'm actually feeling pretty confident about Chengdu. And their standout player for me, I have to say, like sort of what hinges upon their strategy, like I said, is Amon. Amon is their ball specialist, and ball is not quite, but it's a sphere which is close to a 3D wheel, but not really, because that's a cylinder. Is a 3D wheel. But imagine if you rounded off the cylinder.
Doing great. You're doing great. Just keep going.
Imagine if you rounded off the cylinder. But Amon is like the centerpiece because the whole point of this team has always been centered around what they can't play.
Yeah.
Because Amon cannot play any other tanks other than ball. So now finally they have a chance where ball, like a ball Zarya comp and very heavy dives, is very meta. And they can actually work around his style. Now he has played some main tank throughout the season, but still ball has been his focus.
By far
really
his best.
Yeah.
Yes, by far.
So I do think this is going to be Amon's time to shine, to help move this team forward and be continually the paradigm. And finally, for once, his hero is like the meta hero as we go into the postseason. So I'm feeling confident about Chengdu. Do I think they make a big run? Myself, no, still. I don't think they make a big run, but I think it's probably their best bet to actually get some upsets like, beating Seoul, maybe even beating like Spark and competing with Charge potentially. But
I was going to kind of bring it down to the level of, we still have to discuss the initial one, the Chengdu Hunters versus the London Spitfire, because that is their first round. But you've already kind of implied what I was going to say is that I do think the Chengdu Hunters are favored to beat the London Spitfire and then every other team in APAC. But yes.
London Spitfire, this is a team that this is the flubber.
The flubber, yes.
The flubber of teams in terms of it has no identity. Currently, it fills any shape that they take. And I don't like the shape they've currently taken. I don't enjoy it.
And London was one of those ones where, like they had such a good roster, and then they took a more economical approach, I would say, to the rebuild where, there was really... It was quite a surprising moves in the offseason there. And of course, there were rumors that Cloud9 was even looking to sell this roster. So it kind of made sense when they were paring it down, trying to...
I mean, essentially, they did sell the roster.
Yeah, pretty much.
They pretty much did sell
They
the
basically
roster.
did. They just didn't sell the org as a whole sort of thing. But, despite that, the London Spitfire, again, is a team that has a lot of really, really good players on the team, including, I would probably, the most notable one being Glister.
Yeah, Glister, very, very prominent hyperflex coming out of KR Contenders, was actually on the Dynasty Contenders team, was on Gen G. And so they are looking popping, I'd say. They're looking popping in terms of not popping. I'm not huge on this roster. They've also been swapping out Sanguinar a lot for Muse. And Sanguinar's been looking good. Muse, I was never impressed with when his time with T1, aka Fusion Uni. So they need to find some identity. They need to find some urgency. There's no urgency, Nopers. No urgency.
No.
None here. So I do think London is looking by far the weakest team, the most toilet of the toilet zone for APAC. And I'm not big on them making out. Their goal should be to just find an identity. Hunters, they have their identity.
Oh, yeah.
We know theirs. They don't need any sort of, any sort of anti-fraud. Their identity is secure. No one will steal it. London, though, they need to go steal some identities. They need to do something. Anything.
Yeah, it definitely feels like, there's...
Fuse. I said Muse. I meant to say Fuse. Muse is a different player.
Basically the same thing.
Muse is a different player. There's too many
We forgive you.
Fuses.
We forgive you. But yeah, no, the London Spitfire, I think the best way that I would describe them is that they had no expectations put upon them, and they met that.
Yeah.
So.
And they have some nice gyms, but they're very uncut gyms, much like my favorite Adam Sandler movie. Actually, one of my favorites. But moving on from APAC, because that's our expectation. Hunters, they can get some upsets. London, probably not going to do much at all. They just need to, like we said, they need to find their identity. But for APAC, that's sort of the bottom, because the bottom of APAC is very different than the bottom of an A.
Yes.
Hunters in London right now, they're mediocre.
Yes.
And they have but still, as a whole, if I threw them into an A, I think they'd still be decent, probably middle of the pack. So it's a very different scenario when we look at the toilet zone of APAC than we look at the toilet zone for NA, because there's still a chance, like we've talked about, for Hunters to make the run, or London to maybe miraculously find identity, do a lot better, because there's just so much overall talent and they've been practicing with very strong teams. But I must say that for NA, that's when we truly enter the murky depths.
That's where we start getting even deeper and browner. into the darkness.
And we are working our way up because
Yes.
we're starting from the bottom. Now we here and well, actually, for this next team, they've started at the bottom and they've stayed at the bottom. It is the Boston Uprising.
They have accepted their place in the world.
Yeah, that is the Boston Uprising. This team. What would you describe this team as?
I would describe them as half as good as the new Vancouver Titans roster.
Half as good as the new Vancouver Titans roster.
At least if you're going by number.
But with double the time. Being
yeah.
half as good with double the time.
Yeah, so, this is definitely a roster that, no, they don't even feel like they've given up, but been given up on by management and staff a little bit. So, 2 wins in the entire regular season, one of them, ironically, to the Los Angeles Gladiators of all teams. But no, this is a team that has been struggling, and all signs point to continuing to struggle.
I don't see anything other than struggle ahead.
Yeah.
I see a very rough road, unpaved, gravel.
But if we had to save anyone from the Boston Uprising,
Myungbong.
just
He
fishing
needs
rod
to be
into
saved.
the sewer pits. And
We talked about on Tuesday how Sly Coopered him out of Korea, essentially. Put him in his sack and carried him on out. And I do think that this is Myungbong has been a focus point, but he's fallen into the carry syndrome a lot. Him and Jerry both, they've fallen into the carry syndrome, which we see when teams are having issues a lot, but they have very good, strong, talented players. And there's a breakdown of communication more than likely.
For sure.
These players will revert to just saying, okay, I need to pop off at times. I need to do something crazy. And something that's so impressive for Myungbong is that he is a support player on an atrocious team and has still managed to look good. And really supports and tanks are some of the players, the roles in particular that suffer the most when your team is very bad. So it is impressive, his performance throughout the season, even while the team has been so abysmal at points. But for Boston, my survey of Boston, when I get out there and I do the survey of the land and see the prospect, I say that there are some good points on this squad. But the thing that always just kills them in the end is just they make just nonsensical decisions when they get out. And they just also, once again, something that is really categorically a part of every really bad team on average. You see, even with London, even though they're not, I wouldn't describe them nearly the same way. Just no urgency. And even though it's a meme now, this is what I say, no urgency. You need to have aggression and decisiveness and sort of how you want to take these fights on top of just the actual correct decision making, because it's that age-old saying, six different people all doing individual things, 6 individuals doing something, that's chaos. But if they all are feeding, but if you're doing all 6 of you are feeding together, then that's a plan. And it's sort of almost not quite like feeding. So Boston just needs to get on the same page, much like London, but a less talented London on average.
It kind of reminds me of the stuff that we were talking about earlier with way earlier in the year, where we were talking about New York. And even though they were winning those initial games, we were talking about those same exact things where, they were kind of going in and didn't look like they had any sort of plan itself, or didn't look like they, really killed or cared as much.
They also did not kill. They didn't get too many frags.
They didn't get too many frags
either.
That was kind of one of the first warning signs, and people were like, "Oh, that's not true. New York's doing fine. They're still winning and everything." And then, a few weeks after we started saying that, things started really coming apart for New York. So
at this point for London, I'd say, compared to the bottom of the toilet zone for APAC, London, there's some hope there that maybe something crazy could happen but unlikely. Boston, if Boston makes a miracle postseason run in any way, because I don't really see this team ever performing to be. If they're lucky, they might be able to beat, because the team that's right above them currently is Justice. If they're lucky, they can beat Justice. But
you think so?
Or maybe Titans. No, I don't even think they'll beat Justice currently.
No, I don't think there's any chance of beating
I think
the
they're
Titans.
doomed, no matter what. If they were to make a run, though, it would be the most miraculous thing of all time. It would simply... it would essentially make me reevaluate my life if Boston were to have a great run.
Something crazy would have
Because
happened.
there's really nothing for me to suggest other than you just need to be more coordinated and be more aggressive for this squad.
Yeah.
Because
the only thing you need to change in order to be good, Boston, is everything you're doing.
Yeah, they the whole foundation is flawed. It's all skewed. It's bad. It's just bad. It needs serious foundation repair. But moving on.
Yeah, speaking of Washington, since we were even proposing that this was a possibility, Washington Justice currently, again, right above the Boston Uprising in terms of the standings, but they've at least kind of gone for this Hail Mary play of picking up Decay for the end of the 2020 season here. So that's with the new rules. That's something that they can do. It's not something that they have, like they don't have to keep him going into the next season. And we don't know if Decay was just looking for a team so that he could stay in the US on the visa, or if he's actually legitimately interested in staying on the Washington Justice. So, Decay's on it, and Decay's a fantastic player. Even when he was on the Fuel, there were more than, a very much non-zero number of fights where the Fuel would just be like, mess everything up, and then Decay kills everyone. So if that's on a team like the Dallas Fuel, he can probably do the same thing on the Washington Justice as well.
Yeah, even though Justice, I would say, has definitely been a worse team throughout all of the season. Now, maybe we'll see where they'll get to. This is, once again, another team where the meta has gotten better for them as the season got on. Because no double shield, because Roar's best hero is Winston. And that's been like kind of definitely a sticking point for this roster. And Jonu's best heroes are D.Va.
Yes.
And so it was specifically D.Va. His Sigma's been okay at points. It's been fine. Like he's had some good, but D.Va's definitely the hero he likes to be on. And then Aim God loves to play Ana. And then they could even put Arc on Mercy, which is Arc's back. So they have all these meta moments happening. Yeah. The planets are aligning for the Justice.
And exactly the kind of thing that we were complaining about with London Spitfire, the Boston Uprising, is that the Washington Justice does seem very much to actually still care. The fact that they went through the effort to pick up Decay, the fact that the Washington Justice GM is very frequently on Twitter talking, quite publicly with the fans, and the tone behind those posts that they're making is that they are trying to win, sort of thing. And it seems like they understand what's going through with the players. I liked the one tweet where it's like, can't ask much more.
Can't ask for more from this roster.
And then somebody just respond, why not?
Why not?
Why can't we ask for more?
That's still one of my favorite. That's my literally favorite tweet reply in the entirety of Overwatch.
Why not? But
season.
And at some point there's going to be like a cumulative benefit to this. You're talking. This is 2020. We have a team with Decay, with Jonu, with Aim God, with Arc on it. This should be a better roster than it was. So maybe Decay coming in, whether who knows what's going on the inside of it with like shot calling with culture. Maybe sometimes culture is just too badly
it has been a roster
repair.
in flux at points because they've had to jettison essentially half their roster too, because Corey retired, Stratus retired. They've had to make significant changes.
Yep.
And then Lulz just literally has still not entered the States.
Yeah.
So and then Envytv also, I believe, did he cut or leave? I can't remember if he was
one of those.
It was one of those two. I can't remember exactly which one when they released. I think they released him. I'm not sure. But the point is, at this point, I'd have to go back and check. But the point is that left. That's what it was. He left. So still, regardless of that
just
fact.
blindly trusting the one person in Twitch chat. Twitch chat never leads us astray.
Twitch chat will never lie to me. Twitch chat will never lie. But it's also besides the point of the circumstances, because the point is the result's the same. They've lost pretty much the majority of what their original roster was, and they've changed it up a lot. And they're rebuilding. The meta is good for them. They still suffer some of the same issues. Like when I prescribe a medication, when I look at the outlook,
Dr. Avast coming in here.
When I look at the outlook here for the squad, there's talent, there's meta, but they just need to once again find aggression. And also something that's really, really big for this squad is they've had a consistent habit of just hard feeding. A consistent habit of hard feeding. It can stem from a wide variety of issues, right? It's really tough to diagnose without looking at internal comms or what they're looking at. But if they can actually just be aggressive in the right ways instead of just the feeding constantly ways, they have the ability to be a much better squad than they're at. What I imagine they're going to do very well, no. I don't think they'll ever get out of the bottom 5, but they could definitely climb to the fifth of the bottom 5 in NA. They could beat the top of the bottom.
And their first round opponent is going to be against the Vancouver Titans.
Yeah, and that's a winnable game.
Yes.
That's a very winnable game. It's also the next team on our list.
It is.
Is the Vancouver Titans in the toilet zone. Because they've an underdog story, I guess.
Yes, an underdog story. And I think that they're definitely an underdog story that is still on the upswing. Of course, their most recent victory, a big one, was against the Atlanta Reign.
Yes.
A 3-1 victory there. And Atlanta Reign, of course, a team that has been, perennially disappointing. They went 3-2 against both the San Francisco Shock and the Paris Eternal, which are teams that we've been very consistently rating as those A-tier teams. So teams that just barely be able to beat Atlanta Reign, Vancouver Titans reached over the table and slapped them across the face.
Also something interesting to note for that matchup too, Titans have never beaten Justice in franchise history.
Well, there's a first for everything.
Can you believe that?
I actually can't, but
Isn't that crazy?
I think Fuel actually just beat Vancouver Titans. The most recent victory from the Fuel against Vancouver Titans was also a franchise first victory for them. But yeah, Vancouver Titans, they are a season 2 team, not a season 1 team.
Yes.
So it's less impressive, but it is still pretty cool.
So for this roster, they still have a lot of they actually did fix one of their biggest issues heading into postseason already. And fans can be excited about that, I think, which is they stopped playing Lucio Moira 24/7. They stopped playing Lucio Moira 24/7 and started playing some actual comps with BAP and with Ana and things that were actually made a lot more sense for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that this is a very big change that they've already learned and adapted to. Shockwave has been consistently good. He's been the player on this roster. Has been Shockwave.
Shockwave has been a player that got picked up and did impressively well. It's kind of like one of those, testaments to scouting, I suppose, that, as soon as he was picked up and as soon as he kind of popped off, everybody was like, oh, yeah, we always knew Shockwave was good. But, before that, he was relatively unknown. But he really came out of basically nowhere. And then from the very first game that he was in, basically deadlifted the Vancouver Titans.
And it's always nice to have this carry potential here. And there's also there's a really good, his DPS partner, Dalton, there is potential with Dalton. It's just he's been stuck on heroes that he has not been his forte at all. So it hasn't been great. I think there's a lot of potential in this squad. I mean, KSA has been a monster on ping. Shredlocks, Orisa has been good, but he has been very aggressive as he's been the battle cattle, as people refer to. He's been very, very aggressive.
Yeah.
But I do like Titans out of the other teams we've looked at, honestly, in my view, have potentially the highest chance coming in of the previous 2 teams that we've looked at of making it out of like this bottom 3 zone because they have good building blocks and they've shown that they're able to make plans and they're able to initiate, they're able to use some aggression, but it really falls apart with their hero pools, their compositional choices, and just execution. So I really think that there is a chance for Titans to break out of this bottom 3 heading forward and even beat the Justice in that first matchup. I think it's very likely.
And they're a team with basically nothing to lose and everything to gain. The only thing they have to prove is that they deserve to keep their spots moving into 2021, where the Vancouver Titans are going to be looking at, was this good enough for an emergency situation to replace the old roster, or do they need to kind of, when they have the time, rebuild the roster? So, but like overall, the expectations put on the players themselves, the situation where they're in, I think everyone kind of just understands the situation they were in, and they weren't expecting to do great things, for example, like the Atlanta Reign. But that being said, they definitely could use that as the wind in their sails to make a little bit of a run. Do they get very far? Probably not, but through the Washington Justice, maybe.
I think they're the most poised to make it out of the bottom 3. Justice, they may be more star-studded, but I just think that their team play has been so much worse comparatively to the Titans recently and the issues they've been fixing. But moving on to number 4 of the Toilet Zone. Number 4, it's been a controversial one which I received, or actually not, that's number 5. We got to save number 5. But number 4 is the Houston Outlaws. The Houston Outlaws. What can we say about this team?
Well, this is, I'm just going to jump right into it. The thing that always impressed me most about the Houston Outlaws was Dante's play. And he's always been a good player, or at least kind of like an upper middle. I would never kind of classify him as like a really true superstar type, like Carpe or anyone else of kind of that caliber. But Dante has really, really improved throughout the season to the point where he's just notably fantastic in a lot of games, especially compared to, I would say the rest of the Houston Outlaws players. So he's been just a shining bright spot for that squad, especially on characters like Sombra, like Tracer. When Tracer was that meta pick, he was doing just amazing work for this entire squad.
Yeah, this is another roster that has been on the up.
Yes.
If you would ask me this, because this is the roster, if we went earlier in the season, they went to map 7 with Boston Uprising. And in the original Toilet Bowl, the otherwise known as the El Asico, as they say.
The El Asico.
I
love that.
As we've been referring to. So I do think that Houston has had a very good trajectory upwards. The metas have evolved more to where they want. They started using the hydration main tank, which is actually surprisingly good.
Surprisingly
good. Meko getting able to play more Diva is always a
good thing.
It's always a boon, always a plus. Jexa's been good. Dante's been getting, Dante's been pretty consistent throughout the season. His Tracer, his Sombra, all fantastic. And Linkser has made a resurgence after being benched at times for the Blase McCree, which has been not ideal, and has been the pop-off hit scan they need at points. So the puzzle pieces for this roster are together. I think they are another team that is also pretty much on the cusp of breaking out of bottom tier.
Mm-hmm.
They've sort of shifted the roster enough to where they have all the pieces. They just need to finish. Like, they have the corners of the puzzle. They need to fill out the middle. It's like an 1,800 piece. So it took a while to fill out the outside, but you have to build in to go to the inside there. And they need to actually start working on execution. Once again, aggression, always a very important part for any teams that are towards the bottom, is just finding initiative, being aggressive. Because you'll find even for the teams that are mid-table and kind of disappointing, the one thing they still have is they just go and they're in. And aggression can fix a lot of the mistakes for a bad team to make sure that you're not like a bottom tier team, because you're just always taking the initiative.
Yeah.
And Houston really needs to work on that. And they really need to also find... They just really need to be cleaner as well. Like, they're really not making as heinous as mistakes as Boston, Justice, or Titans at points. It's just they haven't found the right moving pieces. They just haven't meshed to the point that we would want from a squad like this.
And I think that, one thing that we mentioned with Maumgong is also probably true with Jexa. Jexa is a character. Jexa is a player who has been kind of notably frustrated throughout the season. And, he's been doing quite a lot of work trying to compensate for where the rest of the squad is lacking. But, once you actually do kind of build up that trust in the team and then find that playbook that you can actually go and use proactively, things will get a lot better.
And as a final note for them, this is, once again, Houston fans, you shouldn't be getting your hopes too high. I'm not going to say this team is still, in my view, not going to be particularly good in its current iteration. It's just, at best, it can make it out of the bottom tier to make it to that mid tier.
Mm-hmm.
And their first opponent, I believe, is the they have it up.
It's the Boston Uprising.
Is it Boston? Oh yeah, which is a super easy game. Like, if Houston
you say
loses,
that, but they are also one of two teams to have lost.
Yeah, Houston should win that game 100%. So
Yes.
That's great for Houston. Like, there is hope for you to make it to the middle tier.
Mm-hmm.
at the end, but I don't think the squad's ever still going to be top tier. They don't have a miracle run them, in my humble view. But number 5, the fifth and final member.
Yes.
The fifth and final member of the Toilet Zone. And also, so technically, if you guys want to know the rankings as it's been going on, because I imagine it's very obvious, but so we've got 13th, 12th, 11th, 10th, and then 9th. So the 9th rated team, Toronto Defiant.
Now, I think importantly is that, like, this is kind of the Toronto Defiant is still one of the teams that picks who they play. So they get to, well, they don't pick. They're the last ones to be selected. But they aren't in this kind of knockout round, like playoff round 1, where the Houston Outlaws play the Boston Uprising. So, like, technically they get a bye through that first playoff round. But
that doesn't mean much, because they'll be playing the winner of... I need to get the schedule out in front of me, actually.
Yeah, they'll play the winner of either Houston Outlaws versus Boston Uprising or Washington Justice versus Vancouver Titans. But, they don't have to prove themselves in round 1.
Yeah, so I'm not... So this is a team that I got a lot of angry... Preseason, I did not rate this team highly.
No?
People were really like, wow, I can't believe you're going to be so low on Toronto Defiant. They got Nevix. They have Surefour. They have Agilities. They have Kariv. Like... This is a team that they have logics. Like, everyone was like, this is a stacked roster. And, the Kellex was the main support at points, and then they got Cruz, who's been filling in, or not been filling in, but has been pretty much a starter since then. But I just... The thing about this roster is that it was filled with some unknowns, because Nevix hadn't played in a long time. Mm-hmm. It was filled with people that were inconsistent at points in the hero pools, like most noticeably players like Agilities and even Logics. And they never really had what was described, what people really felt was like the top tier main support. They felt like Kellex and then now Cruz. They were always been solid players, both of them, but they've never necessarily been top tier. Mm-hmm. So there was no like top tier pieces. And then what made matters worse is that their coaches were being shuffled. Beast was having issues on main tank, so they ended up getting Numlocked, who was supposed to be a coach at first, and then
only lasted as a coach for like a couple days before he actually just was like, nope, the way to improve this team is for me to play main tank. So he became a player.
So it's really been an issue for Defiant, is like compared to a lot of the other squads, like when we look at Boston or Houston, there is a lot more talent with it. I mean, they don't even play Surefour anymore. Surefour doesn't even play anymore.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and there's rumors like people are like, well, he's going to retire at the end of the season. Who really knows, right? Like, we don't actually know what his thoughts are, but his public persona.
It's been a bit on the boom side.
It's been very much like sounding like a player that's going to retire. To me, but who really knows until like the next season happens and the end of the season happens. But this team has a chance, I think, and the big thing for them is it's based around coordination. And that player for me, I feel, is Kariv on this squad. Actually, a lot of people are going to talk about Logix. He has crazy stats.
I was going to talk about.
I know
Logix.
you were going to talk about Logix. Like Logix does have crazy stats, but the thing for Defiant, it's never been an issue for me about too much about their talent in terms of breaking into the middle tier. It's always been coordination. It's always been finding the execution. I never think it's necessarily a talent issue to be mid tier for this team. It's just I haven't been impressed ever with any of their setups or how they want to do things. Like they're never going to have enough talent to be a top tier or even an upper mid tier team in my view. So I don't see them making a great run. But if they can actually just find a consistent roster they're going to play, if they play Logix, I think all the time, and they focus around Kariv's Ana, I think this is going to be a squad that can at least make an okay-ish run, like not get immediately eliminated from playoffs.
Yeah, and like. Logix, really, for this squad to be doing well and moving anywhere into this playoff, they've been relying on Logix, and they need to keep relying on Logix. But Kariv has been playing fantastic. Logix has been playing fantastic, and there's going to be the keys to success. But it's not like the other teams were saying that this is what they need to add to their rosters. Like these guys are already playing like what seems to be close to their potential peak. You need to start getting. The second DPS for Toronto Defiant, actually getting them contributing more towards helping Logix, have to carry less of that load, or increase the coordination with the tanks to make the Kariv's job even easier.
And they're also known for, the Interstellar where they're talking about like he's circling.
That was a hard right turn.
Well, this is gonna make a reference because they're like I think they're going into like the black hole or like something like that, and then Matt McConaughey's like this little maneuver is gonna cost us 51 years or whatever. Yeah, that's Toronto Defiant doing a rotation in Overwatch. In Overwatch League, Toronto Defiant when they rotate, it takes them ages, and that's like their number one thing is that they're actually not the worst in making plans and setting up ult combos. And they have some good talent.
Slow.
Their tempo is so it's just like, and just do another movie reference. It's just like it's Whiplash. It's just like not my tempo, not my tempo, not my tempo. Every time I watch them play, it's disgusting.
Rushing or dragging?
It's dragging. It's dragging. It's so dragging. It's so dragging for this team. And it points back once again to coaching. I think like. They had Feifei as head coach, left. Yes. They've got a bunch of player coaches that are brand new to coaching and has sort of struggled. They moved Mangachu into a coaching role. Numlock was going to be a coach when that was a player.
Yes.
So direction has, their GM retired.
Yes.
So it's definitely a ship without a captain at points for this squad, and that's what's been really struggling. And that's why Numlock, I think, has helped stabilize this roster a lot. It's not just his strength on main tank, but how vocal a leader he can be. So I do think that this is the most important thing for them to fix is to make sure that they are being aggressive and making strong initiations, and they could actually be much better heading into playoffs.
So what you're telling me is they have no urgency.
No, they have no urgency.
No urgency. All right.
They have no urgency at all for that roster. But the toilet zone, it's my summary, I'd say, for all these squads is I don't see them. I don't think there's any hope, honestly, for any of these teams.
None of them. If you had to pick one of them.
From both regions or just from one region?
From NA. If you had to pick one of the worst 5 teams that we talked about, which one might potentially, if all the stars align, see some sort of success?
If all the stars align, I could see the Outlaws.
I'm going to say, I was going to be like, you're going to say Justice. And
no.
Okay, so I'm going to say Justice.
Because Justice to me is like, when I look at this roster, they're getting places, and it's clear they're committed to building something greater. Mm-hmm. But I think they're essentially I think they're polishing a turd.
Oh,
I think they're polishing a turd.
Really?
I don't, and it's not in terms of the players on that roster are turds. It's more of the roster itself in its current iteration is a turd, and it needs work. It needs a lot of work. And I do think they're going to have to build into the next season. They can maybe keep a lot of this talent, hopefully, but they're going to have to restructure everything about this squad and sort of really change their methods, I think, for practice.
So what makes you think that the Outlaws are going to be the ones with
because Outlaws have shown improvement throughout the year. There's been an arc. Mm-hmm. And there's also an arc on the Washington Justice. But the thing and people will point to say, well, I think Justice have gotten a lot better. But I really don't think Justice have fixed any of their core issues for the most part. They've just got a superstar DPS, and they've settled into more comfort pick heroes. I don't think they fixed any of the problems with their squad. Houston, I actually think, have found a roster that fits better for them. I think they're getting into metas that fit better for them. And I also think they've started to identify some problems in terms of at least their compositions that work better for them too. I think they've started to fix some of the issues. While Justice, I think they've just thrown money and gotten more people, and it hasn't fixed any of their underlying problems. So that's why Houston.
All right.
That's why Houston for NA, and then obviously for APAC Chengdu. I don't see London getting anywhere.
Chad is very unhappy at Roar.
Yeah, Roar has been a point of contention for Justice.
Right up there with
it just
Beast
wasn't
as
a good.
well.
It wasn't a good look when you look at the eye test for a player and they're not performing well, and then their ex-head coach comes out and says, "Yeah, he just doesn't play the game." Like, it's not a good look. And it's like, and maybe you could argue that was perhaps unprofessional from John Galt to say that about a player.
Yeah, you could probably say
you
that.
could argue that, but especially since it's like but that's. In my opinion, I think sometimes people are too afraid for especially staff members to be like a Yelp reviewer and be like, 0 out of 10 would not rate this player again, especially because a lot of players are kind of free to just get away with bad habits. And then the public, since the public are almost always behind players as opposed to staff organizations, which I don't think is anything inherently wrong.
That's interesting because there's the one big kind of fiasco, I say, where it was Tailspin and Fisher, right? Where Tailspin gave a negative review of Fisher when he another, like, the team that was looking to pick him up was looking for, like,
was that like was that just like an article that was written? I honestly wasn't an article.
No, there was leaks, but basically
leaks, okay.
the point was that you're not allowed to give like negative recommendations on players for some like employment law thing. So I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but
you're not allowed to wait. But then what's the point of record? So, well, everyone asks for reviews in any job, right? You can give a negative review, right? Because that defeats the purpose of a review.
No,
if you can't say anything bad about a candidate, then it defeats the purpose of asking previous employers.
Yeah, I don't make the rules, but
there must be something.
You open yourself up to a lot of liability if you give a negative recommendation to another employer about an employee.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're learning adult world stuff.
Oh, you just don't say anything good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was under the impression, this is news to me, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, good news is I've always been a model employee, so I've never had to worry about it. I never had to worry about that. But I always thought that the point of it was like you could also say if someone did something negative.
Yeah, so like actually coming out and saying negative things opens you up to legal liability.
Well, I have reading Rainbow. The more you know.
The more you know. You're one of today's 10,000.
I have learned today. But that's just the problem, is that when you're so excellent as an employee, you don't have to know these sort of caveats, these nuances, because they love me. Yeah. Everywhere I go. They just love me.
Throw rose petals in front of the path that I walk upon.
They like everything I do. Well, I'm glad we agree at least on the roster, and you agree that London probably is not going to do anything for APAC. It's going to be Chengdu.
Which, knowing our luck, means that they'll win the grand finals.
I think the bottom tier is like the most cut and dry of our postseason like preview. I think the bottom tier is the most cut and dry.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot more fighting. There's going to be
so categorically bad, and APAC is so strong that like there's just no movement within the bottom tier for the most part, unless something crazy happened. It's more of like we can give suggestions, like here's what I'd like, especially like Defiant or Houston to do, and also Justin. Like there are some clear things you can be picked. Boston is a lost cause.
Yep,
Boston's 100%. A lost cause.
Yep.
Yeah, they're lost. But there are things those other squads could do that would make them a lot better heading into postseason. But Boston's done. It's done. Stop it.
Just
stop.
Just give up.
It's time to stop. It's just time to stop.
Unless you're a Boston Uprising fan, then I love you and your passion and your loyalty and your dedication to lost causes. Keep it up.
Keep it up.
Keep it up. Even losers need fans.
Keep it up. But that's I would say a pretty static first like preview for postseason. I'd say when we head into the next episodes for this, it's gonna get a lot more fluid. We're actually gonna have there's actually gonna be chances. There's gonna be real stakes for these teams. But the bottom tier is just so concrete. Really, it's just so concrete that I can't see anyone rising above it. Other than if I'm gonna make one holistic pick, though, Chengdu is the most likely out of all the bottom tier teams to actually make a good playoff run.
Despite what the wheel of Chengdu says.
Despite what the wheel says this time, but we don't trust the wheel.
We don't trust the wheel.
We don't trust
the wheel. Is full of lies.
Here in the wheel, Popplesy. Is it Popplesy? Popple?
One of those.
Popple? States? Papa?
Pretty sure it's
Papal. I don't know.
But
Papal?
Anyway.
I don't know. I'm not Catholic, so I don't know enough about it. I'm not Catholic. So, Papacy. Papa John's?
Well, that pretty much only leaves the mailbag for this episode then. Did you want to...
It does.
Did you want to do the answers from last weekend first or give chat...
we'll do the answers from last weekend.
We'll do the
first.
answers?
We always
All
like
right.
to do the answers from
Well,
last
I've got a
first.
ton here. What do you got?
I got to pull up my Discord real quick, actually.
All right.
I thought I was on it, and then I tabbed off of it.
So last week's question was about the addition of Fall Off to Widowmaker. And Homebound 11 from the Contested podcast wrote in and said, personally, I like the addition of Fall Off. One-shots do have a place within Overwatch, but need to be balanced by the skill required to hit those shots. The change is meant to force Widow closer to the fight overall. It's sneaky how the ammo change makes long range weaker, but adds ammo to her machine gun at the same time. It allows for more machine gun cleanup at close range. Maybe now I can run SMG Widow instead of legs. JK. If I could, I would want to know from the devs whether they, A, want to force Widow to have to play closer to the fight to get max value, or B, make Widow not be the only one-shot hero. The answer would shed much-needed light on the changes. If I was a developer, keep the ammo change, but make the damage fall-off go from 50 to 100 meters. The ramp-up with damage fall-off is too much in the current iteration, in my opinion.
That was very in-depth, honestly. Compared to... So listen to this. This is from Gerald from Discord.
Okay,
He says,
but
McCree
this
equals
is your, this
short
is
range.
your Discord.
Ash equals mid-range. Widow equals long range should stay that way. And it had 3...
But isn't it all...
This TBHs reacted underneath it.
Oh, the classic reaction.
Very succinct.
Yes.
I like that, though.
I mean, technically, though, you still have McCree's fall-off range being shorter than Soldiers. Or who do they say is the mid-range?
Ash.
So what is Ash's fall-off compared to the Widowmaker new one? Isn't it still lower?
I still like that, though.
Yeah, but I think that is the case. Like, they're complaining, but... So
I like that breakdown.
Ash's fall-off is 20 to 40 meters or 30 to 50 meters, depending when scoped in. So it is still the case.
Yeah.
So what are you angry about?
Well, apparently, that's
this
a great...
TBH?
This TBH.
Sure.
They're mad about this TPH. This DPS. They're mad about this DPS.
All right. Are there any other smooth brains in your Discord you want to shout out?
Well, I mean, I must say that I like... well, first of all, I see that someone underneath that. Joffrey says soldier equals on the flank. Pog beneath that. So very good. Very good there.
Top tier commentary from Josh and as
always. No, that was actually Joffrey, not Josh.
Thank God.
But Indra says fall off super duper incredibly good. And also, yes, sniper mobility. They nerf sniper mobility. They should be glass cannons, not haha, let me walk to your backline, kill you, and people leave. That's something that hasn't been brought up too often with Widow, actually. Is like we're talking about fall off damage, but they buffed. Did they nerf grapple recently or was it a buff? I can't remember what they last did do it. It was still something to where grapple is still very good. Mm-hmm. And having snipers like Hanzo...
I think they nerfed it and then removed some of the nerf, if I'm remembering correctly.
I can't remember exactly. But either way, it wasn't enough to where... They reduced cooldown and reverted it. That's what it was. That's something that hasn't really been talked about too much on average. Is like we talk a lot about damage and fall off, but for the snipers, like wall climb for Hanzo and the jump and the grapple for Widow,
Coach gun for Ash.
Yeah, mobility is always probably the most valuable thing a hero can have in Overwatch. It's just so powerful. It's just so all around powerful.
Yeah.
Oh, is that our word? Is mobility? Oh.
Welcome to the show! No, it's a raid from SI Not Found.
Oh!
It's the raid bell. Thank you, SI Not Found, for the raid.
Oh, my
Hope you had a
ears.
fantastic stream. Just gonna make Avast deaf.
I will be deaf. They actually are ringing. They actually
it's a
are
very
ringing.
loud bell.
It's very loud.
Like you have a compressor, so yeah. But yeah, my ears are ringing. This is a loud bell. Anyway, thank you for the host, SI Not Found. I hope you had a fantastic stream. Welcome to the stream for the viewers who are just joining us.
They got here.
Yeah,
so
they just
late.
got here right. But anyway, so if you have never watched an episode of Contested before, it's myself, Jane, and that guy. His name is Avast. We do this Overwatch show twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Talk about the Overwatch League, the Overwatch community, and that kind of stuff. So today we were talking about more of the preparation for the postseason of the Overwatch League.
It was Toilet Zone Day.
It was Toilet
Zone Day, SI viewers.
Now start over for the new viewers.
Start over the episode. Just rewind it.
Just rewind
the
rewind
episode.
it, forehead.
Just rewind it, guys.
Anyway, so we're going to get back to the show, but the segment that we're currently doing is called Mailbag. So we ask a question every single week, and then right now we're just reading the responses. And the question that we asked on Tuesday is what people thought about the addition of Fall Off to Widowmaker.
And so far, everyone seems to say Fall Off is fine.
Yeah.
That's what
Basically.
everyone's saying. As opposed,
Widowmaker fall off bad?
Yeah.
Answer, no.
And it brought up the more interesting debate of like, where does Widow grapple cooldown fit into that? Because I think that's something that actually would really change the strength of like Widow and snipers in general, is the mobility changes versus like pure damage. Because if it was easier to just find the Widow and she can't reposition as fast, same goes for Hanzo in a way, then I think they become a lot less oppressive, even if they kept the same fall off and things like that. So that's my personal view on it, because it just makes it too easy to get value. But that's not what's currently in the game at all. Any other good responses you want to highlight?
Well, I'm not sure about good, but let's give this one. It's going to be controversial. PMB521, also from the Contested Podcast subreddit, says, I feel like this shouldn't be a controversial opinion, but it might be. There should be no one-shots in Overwatch.
Oh.
Overwatch was designed at its core around extended skirmishes with many decisions made in a fight. One-shots eliminate such a large percentage of the decisions just by hitting a hook or headshot. It's a boring and less skilled of a game that feels like Valorant on 2x speed rather than Overwatch. You can't properly contest a Widow on a lot of maps without a Widow of your own, so you end up having to mirror it, which is just not Overwatchy, which was designed and marketed around counterpicking. TLDR, one-shot's bad.
Well, first of all, what's your opinion on that?
I'm still processing.
You're processing.
I'm processing.
Okay. Well, before we go on, Kroko says that they think Mercy should be able to one-shot one person a game. So I think it should be like a cooldown.
It's apparently we're going like
once.
Full Metal Alchemist on this, where it's like every life has a cost. You res somebody, but
you only get to do it once.
Somebody on the team dies.
You do it once.
It's it's a boring and less skilled version of the game. Like, there is definitely a skill in not only hitting a lot of those one shots. There's less skill in a hook than hitting like a hard headshot onto like a tracer that's blinking around and crouch spamming. But even then, recognizing the risk of headshot and then the risk management of like having one shots in the game. You know that they're a game, you know that they're a risk, and how you avoid them tactically does also make it more skillful. You could definitely make the argument around like fun and enjoyment and things like that. But in terms of skill, no, I don't think that that's a valid argument.
This is interesting because I have like a split view.
Yeah.
If we want Overwatch to be much more FPS centric, then we need one shots,
Yes.
Like we do, because we need some things to get through. Now that the sustainability is going down, though, it's not as big of a deal. But like back when sustain was really high, one shots are kind of required to keep the pace going for the game. And secondly, for an FPS centric game, one shots for snipers is like sort of, and even just for like comparing to games like CSGO or Valorant, like there's one shots for rifles or pistols even. So that's necessary to keep it FPS oriented. But if our goal for Overwatch is not to be necessarily an FPS, but more of the MOBA style.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that I agreed on this, is that especially, I think there are a lot of things where it might be, I might not be as bold as this comment to say that like, this is what it was designed to do, the developer's trying to do this. But the fact that there are characters that do not require nearly as much skill, which, Overwatch, the developers have kept introducing and kept making strong. They do want this to be a very accessible game, not just to people who have the skill to hit headshots. So if you are...
Well, it's also because one-shotting in general, in my view, if you're MOBA-esque, it sort of negates the purpose of having like certain, like the tank and support roles, because like you can't save someone from a one-shot with a shield or with... you can with BAP lamp, I guess, and like maybe beat. But, for other like just base healing, you can't save them from the one shot,
Yep.
So if you're coming from that sort of design philosophy, I would say no. But my personal preference, yes. You should be able to headshot and one-shot people, okay? Especially squishy characters. Tanks, no. Because that ruins the point of tanks, in my opinion.
Yes.
But you should be able to one-shot squishy characters with your rifle or your bow or your throwing axe or whatever it may be, because it's still an FPS game and it adds a skill.
Even in MOBAs, if you have kind of like
possible.
the 80 carry or somebody really squishy, those guys can definitely get one shot still.
So that's how I feel about it. It's like I can see where if you were to take it down a different design path, you could argue that. But I tend to disagree and see like you should always have the capability to one-shot squishy people if you hit a good shot, because that's fun and that's cool and that's epic. And then when you make your montage and you're like, yes, let me put out the lens flares and the hit sounds and then you spin around in 360. You can't do that if you don't have one shots.
Now, there was also one comment that wasn't in response to our mailbag, but a correction from a comment you made in the previous episode. It said, Avast, Sideshow wasn't malding about people saying Fielder should be Rookie of the Year. He was malding about people saying that Fielder is the worst rookie on his team and therefore shouldn't be in the Rookie of the Year contention at all.
Oh, people were saying, that's what he's malding about?
Yeah.
That people were saying that he was the worst rookie on his team.
Yeah, or at least not the best rookie on Paris Eternal. So if there was a better rookie on Paris Eternal, you shouldn't even consider Fielder, apparently.
So was the contention more about they should have considered Fielder?
I'm just the messenger here, man. Don't be looking at me like that.
Interesting. Everyone's dropping their yaps.
Yeah.
But the thing is, this is Rookie of the Year, not MVP, technically. We didn't yap in Rookie of the Year just yet. We can yap that. Huh. Well, so I guess there are other very good rookies with Fielder on his squad, but it's weird that they were like, yeah, we shouldn't even consider him because there's other good rookies. I can get that mauled. I can get that mauled.
You can get that mauled?
I can get that mauled.
All right, join the mauled
You
club.
can't break those cuffs. It's an old reference.
All right. Anyone else from your Discord needing shout out? Yeah, that's it.
People have been typing since then, and there's some that I can't repeat on broadcast here, honestly, for some of the feedback. Someone says Frick Widow.
Frick Widow.
Well, she doesn't say Frick.
Your language.
She can go to heck. Though they
All
used
right,
a very different euphemism, I'd say. They used a very different euphemism for that one. So fair. But that has been the mailbag from last week. Now this week's mailbag.
Oh yeah.
This week's mailbag.
Oh yeah, we had a really good one. This one has required a lot of thinking. So, we know that you guys love writing essays. So this is going to be like a perfect topic for y'all who's just, keyboard warriors. Get ready to write those 95 theses. You want to unveil the grand question that we have come up with this week?
We don't have games this weekend just yet. And so there's nothing. You guys aren't going to be sitting around watching some games. You got the Bad Patchy Mario League.
Yeah.
Perhaps, if you're going to watch that. But what were you guys doing when Overwatch League isn't on in the weekend? That's what I have to ask.
That's what we want to know. If you're not
know.
watching the Overwatch League,
what are you doing?
Are you like the teachers?
I want to know
school?
about Pog U.
Pog U.
I want to know about Pog U. What are you guys doing? Huh? What's your hobbies? What's your interests? Do you like long walks on the beach? Do you have a beach near you?
Hopefully one with fewer hurricanes than the beaches in Texas right now.
Yeah. Do you just power off? Do you just do you just shut down when Overwatch League isn't on the weekend? You just like, okay, guys, I'll be back next week?
Are you like teachers over the summer break? You just put a coat hanger in your
just
collar
you just put yourself up in the closet. Yeah. Maybe you're like a bird where they put the apron or like the tarp over the
head
over the cage and you just fall asleep.
Just goes to sleep.
Night.
Well, let us know. I look forward to your responses. We will be back next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central, and I'm going to remind people about this far, far in advance, but the postseason starts next Thursday, which means that our second episode of the week next week is going to be on Wednesday instead. So you get a doubleheader, Tuesday and Wednesday. So look forward to that.
Yeah, look forward to. Also, I want to hear these because I want to read how interesting you guys are so we can compare how cool our hobbies are. Because we can learn how cool other viewers are.
He's taken up tea as a hobby.
It is one hobby. Well, it's also, it's something I enjoy, not just a hobby. I mean,
Okay, we don't need to get into it. Nobody wants to hear it.
So yeah, but those are the responses either in my Discord, the Contested Mailbag, and the YouTube comments when we put on Envytv for this episode. You could do it in the subreddit, the Contested Mailbag subreddit. You have a lot of options. The podcast reviews, which no one has used. As far
have
as
you
we're aware.
even checked?
No.
But then how could you know?
Mike would tell us.
Mike, has anybody given us a review in the podcast?
Mike would tell us, surely.
Mike hasn't checked either.
Mike hasn't checked either. He hasn't checked the podcast
We've been saying this for a week and we haven't been checking the podcast reviews.
No.
Oh, no.
What if there's just like one guy?
There's one guy every single week has been giving us a review and we haven't been featuring him.
He's just been...
Mike, what have you been doing? Our tech director is just frantically searching through his phone.
Not like this.
You said that at the end of almost every single
because
episode.
I'm really excited to have someone use the podcast.
And you never checked. I just assumed you checked, and you assumed Mike checked. And nobody was checking.
No? Okay, we're good.
Okay. We're safe.
Yeah,
nobody has given us a response in the review section of Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So get on that one.
Somebody can be first.
Woo! Close call. We're
good.
Close call there. Well, we will see you guys on Tuesday of next week and also Wednesday because the playoffs start on Thursday. Give us your responses. I'm Avast. This is Jayne.
Oh.
And that's been Contested.
Bye.